hope so. Hi, it's Melinda from Hoping There Was None. So I'm coming on to talk about, it's Child Abuse Awareness Month. It's the last day. I know, I'm such a procrastinator. So I wanted to talk about that. It's really an important topic, as well as the sexual assault awareness month too. I don't want to leave that out, but child abuse, it was really heavy on my heart today to go ahead and talk about this. As one that has experienced some stuff going back to childhood, it's really important, and I kind of wish some of the teachers that I had saw the signs, and they didn't. No one questioned that. And looking back, I wish someone would have. The one person who did, of course, by the time I was old enough, I was terrified that if she told somebody, the authorities or the police, what she saw, that my mom would get in trouble, or I would get in trouble. Mainly me. I had that feeling. And that's the thing with kids, is kids might feel that they're actually being in trouble if they tell, or if someone finds out. Okay, so that's a big thing. There's some guilt. There's a lot of shame there. So if you have a child that's experiencing that, or seems to be like being a recluse and so on, it's just because they might even beg you, please don't tell. So you might see that a lot too. So let me pull that up. So let's talk about some signs of child abuse. I've got my infographics because I just love infographics, but a lot of this I'm just doing unscripted, okay? So old-fashioned, old school, unscripted. So what are some signs? I'm going to hit the heaviest one first, and they're all heavy. But what are some signs of child abuse, sexual abuse? So maybe that child has some detailed accounts and also understands some behaviors that a child should not understand. Okay, they're using the words, they might use movements, they might actually become a little more sexual, they might be exhibiting different activities that are very provocative, that a child at a young age should not be experiencing. They might be promiscuous, they might be dressing a certain way, but again, they might say these words, or even inappropriately touch others, or have inappropriate behavior with others as well. But they don't understand that, especially if they're really young, might have grown up this way. So it's not appropriate for a child at all, especially at that age, a young age. They could have sleeping disturbances, they could have nightmares, there could be a situation where they are suddenly regressing into not being potty trained, okay? Maybe they were potty trained at one point in time, and now they just are wetting the bed. They could have constipation issues. They might have urinary tract issues as well. So there are other issues that you might notice too. They could be they might have difficulty walking. They might have difficulty sitting. They could, and I know this is really hard to hear. I know all of these are going to be really hard to hear. They might run away. They could be overly secretive. They could also have self-harm, or maybe they're getting showered with gifts all of a sudden. We could talk about child trafficking another time, but they might be getting gifts. You just don't know. They could just decide to run away. They're not in school when they're supposed to be. A lot of those are when they're a little bit older. So you might see those things with someone that is being sexually abused. And they also, with all of these, they might not like being around a certain person. There might be somebody in your life, and you just notice that they maybe shy away from that person. Maybe they get angry when this person's around. They might not want to hug that person. We could talk about that too also, but those are definitely some signs. And there are a bunch more, but this is just going to be the Cliff Note version, if you want to call it that. And what else? So we have those things going on with the sexual abuse as well. And with all of these, I want to stress how important it is to, if you notice these signs, talk to somebody. You know, it can be your local DCS, CPS, the different things, acronyms and so on, whatever that is for you. You can do these anonymously. Maybe you're the parent and think your other parent is molesting your child, and that could happen. What are the signs that you can look for? These are some of them, okay? And this is a touchy subject for me because of my own experience with alleged sexual abuse of my daughter. So this is a very hard subject for me to talk about, but it's important. It's a very important, talking to your children to let them know that secrets aren't okay, that boundaries, body boundaries too. No one's supposed to touch your, and whatever words you want to use. I tried not to use too many, baby words like, oh, to let them talk, touch your, whatever that is for you. Just to say, okay, they shouldn't touch your vagina, they shouldn't touch your penis. I let them know the words. So that's up to you. That's personal preference, but I did let them know that no one is supposed to make them to touch your parts. And you might be saying, okay, well, you had some situation, alleged abuse. I had inkling something's wrong. My daughter would be bathed. My little daughter would be bathed in the middle of the afternoon while the other two were running around like little madmen. And that really struck me. It's like, why is she showered? She's in her jammies. She's showered. And none of the other kids are. It just made no sense to me. And I was not liking her body responses. I didn't like the excuses. And a lot of her behavior became a little more acting out, also a little more reclusive. She was entering that teenage stage, so she was becoming a lot more internal. She was doing a lot of internal stuff too. Her grades suffered quite a bit around that time too. So these are things that you can look for. And I did ask her, again, the kids might be secretive. I did ask her if something happened at the time. She said no. So these are things, even though you do the right things, even though you're looking for the signs, even though you are doing what your due diligence, they might be just fearful and scared to come forward. And later on, I did find out that there were some threats. If she were to come forward, that there would be repercussions, and that scared her. We're not going to cry, okay? But yes, it's something to look for. So physical abuse. Now, physical abuse with children, that can be broken bones. Maybe you see bite marks, cigarette burns, or burns in general, fractures. It's like every other day or every other week when you see this child, maybe it's at school or at church, this poor kid's got a black eye. And I'm not talking the normal things where, you go through those clumsy, and I've been there, clumsy growing periods where it seems like you're always tripping over your own feet. No, I'm talking that there actually looks like it's very serious. They're always walking into a wall, walking in a door, fell down the stairs, tripped over their bike. There's something to that. So these abrasions, these injuries, they're very unexplained, or the explanation for them might be a little far-fetched. They could be very nervous. They could be disruptive, very hyperactive, also aggressive. And that's with all of these. They can also have a lot of these attributes as well. They can become their emotions. They're going kind of crazy there inside their bodies, not knowing, as we as adults have a hard time processing abuse and what happens to us. The kids, they've got hormones going on as well, the shame and so on and so on. So they might have these behaviors as well, and they don't know how to act, how to process it. And I say this as an adult as well as we do, and we know how we do as an adult. They might all of a sudden, again, they have fear. They don't want to be by this person, whatever caretaker it is, the babysitter, boyfriend, girlfriend. They may not want to be around that person. They could be, maybe you go to hug them and they don't want to be hugged. Or maybe you hug them and they go, ow. Maybe they are physically unable to get a hug at that time because they're hurting. They may have bruises or something like that. Also, signs of emotional abuse. We're going to just a little bit. We're going to touch a little bit on all of these. So there could be, again, with all of these, I'm going to sound like a broken record. There could be developmental issues. They could have physical issues as well, to where they're impaired. Maybe they aren't able to be potty trained until way a lot later. I wet the bed until I was 12, and then as an adult, I wet the bed again because of what the trauma I was experiencing. I don't do it anymore, but that's something that I did for a very long time. There are speech disorders that could happen. This is emotional abuse. Low self-esteem. They don't feel worthy at all. Their worth is like this. They could be, again, there could be some aggression or destructive behavior. They could feel suicidal, depressed, using that self-harm. They might have attempts or these thoughts. They might even start coloring or drawing things that are really dark. Murder, guns, knives, blood, and so on and so on. They might have just this rage inside. They are acting out. Maybe they're smoking, taking drugs. They might be skipping school, talking back to you, sassing you, and so on and so on. So if they are maybe, and this is sad, talking about that trafficking too, it could be in a situation where you know this child's living with multiple people, and they seem to be on just a merry-go-round of people, excuse me, are living in this one space, or multiple people are always going through this one space. There's a fear. They might not trust the police. You might not be able to talk with this child alone. There could be evidence of these abuses, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, and so on. It could be that you are, maybe you notice this child's on the street corner. So there could be situations where it's that hyper arousal. You see this child acting in a certain way. They might make offhanded comments about things that they have to do. They might not be in school, and I'm not talking homeschooling. They might not be in school because they're living a different lifestyle. They could be working with their employer. They could be working very long hours. So there's some things to think about with that, and that's a lot. It really is. And intense, excuse me, with the mental abuse too. And your verbal abuse, they're going to be talked down to. They're going to be called names. This child, again, their worth is in the toilet. They don't really have a high esteem of themselves. They could be called stupid. They could be called dumb. They could be called useless. They could be called fat. You don't know. And if you've ever been called any of these names, you know it can be very hard. And again, we're seeing some kind of developmental issues as well. There could be that there is, and I'm trying to get to as many things because there's so much. There really is. There could be a situation where the child is by themselves a lot, to the point where the parents are never home. So it's more like a neglect. Maybe they don't have clothes, shoes, or they've outgrown their clothes or their shoes. It could be that they're always, and I'm not talking always hungry because they're growing, because kids are growing and they're always eating. I'm talking about, you see that maybe they've lost some weight or a lot of weight. So they aren't being well cared for. Maybe they need special medication, and they never seem to have that medication, so they're really suffering for that. Constantly dirty, maybe dirty diapers, something like that. They're frequently absent if they're in school. They might not have a coat, again talking about shoes, so they could be dressed inappropriately. So those can be things that you can look for neglect. Maybe they abuse alcohol or drugs as well. So these are some signs that you might consider looking at, and I don't want to be one of those people that are saying, well, little Sally down the lane, I don't like Dad, so I'm going to call the authorities on them because I don't like Dad. No, don't do this to be vindictive. We're actually looking out for the welfare of the children to see if there's any sort of behavioral issues, abuse, neglect, and so on, and relationship issues with others. So what can you do? If you're somebody, and again, I don't want anybody doing anything that's going to be mean-spirited. Don't do that. But if you actually see this child being abused, if you see those bruises, if you see maybe rope burns, if you see that this child's cowering, and sometimes it ends up spilling into school where these kids are bullied too because their self-esteem, or they are the bullier because they don't have that control when they're at home. So they might act out this way, and so on and so on. So what can you do as a parent? Make sure, and this is something I know I tried to do as well, after I got it, that, listen to your spidey senses. Feel that gut. If your gut is telling you that there's something off about a person, please try to trust your judgment. There's a reason we have this God-given intuition, so please listen to that, okay? Don't blow it off. Really and truly listen to that instinct that you have for yourself, your child, or somebody else's. If you're at school, you see a kid, and something's just telling you there's something nagging. Try to listen to that, okay? Not to have, and I don't have my hula hoop with me, but if we had that hula hoop with me, I would say, okay, this is my boundary. You cannot, nobody's going to get, I'd have this on my child, and actually I already told Miniman, no one comes inappropriately to touch you, to come near you. This is your boundary. It's like put yourself in a bubble, and we don't want anyone inappropriately coming up to you to do anything, touching, saying anything. If there's a situation or a person that makes you feel uncomfortable, not making him hug everybody. And there was a time I did that, okay? Just truth, because that's how I grew up. We hug everybody. And there were people that I did not want to hug, family members that gave me the creeps. They might have lingered too long. They said inappropriate comments about my budding body, and that made me feel very comfortable. Lingered a little too long looking at certain parts as I was growing up, and I didn't like that. So I want to make sure that my son, my youngest right now, is protected, but also my daughters, they're older, they're adults, but still to say, hey, we have these boundaries in place. No one touches you this way. Me, I'm mama. Mama bear comes out if someone's harming my kids. So I'm just making sure that they're taken care of, but also for people around me. I got grandbabies. I want to make sure that I'm not seeing any red flags with them as well. So just listen, watch out for those red flags. Pay attention to behaviors of others even, maybe that parent, that neighbor. Pay good and close attention to that, okay? You might have to call the police. Call whatever service that it is in your area anonymously if you can. You might see this at school, so you bring it up to the school teacher, you bring it up to the principal, and so on and so on. Just be proactive in that, paying attention, be situationally aware if you need to do that as well. What is it that you can do to maybe report it to a supervisor if this is work? Maybe you're a teacher's aide or something and you see some behavior that's very inappropriate between a teacher and a student. So bringing it to a supervisor as well. But if you're a parent that is going through a situation of divorce or separation, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that is, husband, wife, log, keep a paper trail, notice those signs if the child's not sitting, if they're not eating after they visited mom or dad, if they have unexplained bruises and so on. Please be mindful of that. Write it down, keep a paper trail, take pictures if you need to, but I don't want you to do it to where like, okay, you got to strip down, just came from dad's house. No, if you just notice things subtly, sometimes it's subtle, you can just see different things. And a lot of times, especially if you're out of that situation, a lot of times the child might feel safe enough to come to you to bring up the situation. Well, you know what, this happened at dad's house. And they might tell you that dad was taking inappropriate pictures of them, or dad was just talking meanly to little brother, or that dad left them or mom left them at the store while she was out in the car or at the casino. I'm just giving you ideas, okay? I went to grandma and grandpa's house and grandma locked me in the closet. Whatever that is, just be diligent. Believe your child, okay, to a degree. I mean, I really do. I want you to think about that. Are they being earnest? Are they being honest? And a lot of kids aren't going to go ahead and lie about these things. There's definitely something to it. So you know your own child. You know your own grandbabies. And if it's somebody that you've had conversation with, if you've had interaction with a while, you know them. And this is not something that someone usually, just says white lies about as a child. It's a tough subject. It really is. It's really hard to talk about. It's hard to think about, and especially in the world that we're living in right now. I don't want to go around with blinders, but I do want you to know that there are resources that you can look at. Sometimes people don't want to get involved. They also don't want to, I don't want to call on the police. What if I'm wrong? And so on. Just keep observing. Keep an ear open. You don't know. If the child's in a swing in the middle of winter with no shoes on and no coat, well, there's something definitely wrong there. So try your best to maybe call the police, whatever you've got to do, get somebody else involved. Maybe if it's a neighbor, you ask your husband or your girlfriend, boyfriend, or wife, hey, I think the neighbor's doing this, or what do you think? Sometimes you can do that. And all in all, I don't know what the correct answer is for any of these, but just to know that it's the life of a child. And I'm going back also, not only my own story, but back, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I think I blogged about it. My son had went to school with a young man, and I remember they were friends. and it was in the Black Oak area. He didn't go to school for a while, and I know he had mentioned it. My son had mentioned, hey, I didn't see blah, blah, blah. They used to hang together or talk to each other, and because he didn't have a lot of friends. He had mentioned he hadn't seen him in a while. It's like, well, that's kind of strange. And it had to be maybe 6 months later, I saw a article in the newspaper that this little boy was found. And it's not like I really hung with him, but it made me so sad that he was missing from school, and nothing had happened, and the things they did to him were awful. So just be mindful. I told myself I was going to cry about this or think about my kids. So just be mindful. Be proactive. Take action if you need to. Okay? These are our babies. These are our babies. This is our future. What do you want for your child or your children as well? You know, sometimes these kids, again, and I know it because I did it. I didn't want to get in trouble. Look for the signs. Just be there, listen, hold space, whatever you got to do. And I know once I found out about my daughter, honestly, I was so mad. Oh, I was so mad. Okay, on that, I'm going to end because I'm just going to start crying and thinking some bad things that I'm going to have to apologize to God about. So this is Melinda. I'm going to sign off. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I am coming on with a wonderful guest tomorrow, so I'm really excited to bring Cheryl on. And I do have another one that's coming on a few days later. So please join me. I'll be on Hope When There Was None. And you'll find the podcast also on your favorite listening platform. I'll be posting this on Instagram. You'll find me on YouTube. So join me. Thank you, Nicole. I love you too, babe. Join me on any of these platforms. You know what? Just blessings for all of you. Thank you for listening and being encouraging, supportive. I love you. Please stay safe. Bye-bye. Bye, Nicole. Thanks for watching, love.